Sleeping under a big, starry sky offers a back-to-basics kind of joy, a chance to connect with family and recharge unlike anything else. Of course, no fire is complete without a tasty snack being passed around, so let's see what fits that bill in the camping days back in the day. No way can we discuss camping and not bring up roasted hot dogs. Sausages toasted to perfection amidst a natural fire in the openness of the wild, with no light to pollute the sky and nothing but a stick to eat them with, create a truly authentic camping experience. It was as bare bones of an experience as you could have, but it was packed with heart and soul for some reason. Many honest conversations and childhood memories were formed waiting for the sausage to hit that perfect shade of brown with a little bit of burnt skin on the outside, and not just grandfathers, but all kinds of friends, groups, and families would bond over the beloved meal. It does not get more classic than this. Before marshmallows became popular on open fires, it was common for people to celebrate a good night spent camping with hot sausages. S'mores were something that existed alongside those sausages, though, and they are actually much older than you would think. Despite first appearing in the Girl Scouts of America handbook in 1927, these became a massive hit with grandfathers all over the South and America in general. Now, the locals still did make s'mores before this recipe ever dropped, but this was considered its first step into the mainstream of America's culinary scene. If you were tired after spending a long day trekking in the woods and watching your step, some s'mores and graham crackers were just the thing to put you right back in your mood. If nature itself alongside family was not already doing that, bet you didn't think they came from the Girl Scouts of all places though, right? You might be thinking this sounds pretty pre-planned, so what if you wanted to really go into the wild survivor style? You would simply toss out the packaged and canned food and rely on the catch of the day. Now that the rivers of America would be filled with all kinds of maritime delicacies as a blessing of nature and God, but do not fish those lakes dry. That is right. Back in the 20th century, fishing was less a hobby and more a basic life skill that people knew. Sure, you always could unwind pretty well next to the lake waiting for something to bite, but you also could save a lot more money and have a pretty healthy and tasty meal at the same time if you brushed up on your fishing. Nothing like some fresh, largemouth black bass, trout, or panfish, along with basic seasonings to truly put you in that camping vibe. Remember those Looney Tunes cartoons where the coyote was always cooking something on a fire in a pot? He was probably whipping up a batch of Dutch oven biscuits. Now you might be thinking what a Dutch oven is because it sounds special, but it actually really is not all that complicated. Ovens like these are just cooking pots with tight lids and thick walls made out of seasoned cast iron, aluminum, or ceramic. What they are, though, is incredibly perfect for camping because you can make just about anything you would need a real oven for with this and some hot coals, and that includes the best campfire biscuits you have ever had. Missing home in your tent because of all the snacks you could munch on? Fear no more, because if you ask your grandpa about this, we bet he will be able to tell you how to get and work one of these, as well as show you some baking skills you did not know he had. Now, walking tacos themselves are not really a full and proper dish, but they do still work very well in outdoor settings. They get their name from how easy it is to walk around with these and snack on them, and you kind of want to stock up on stuff like that on your camping trips. The taco part comes from the wide variety of garnishes, which can range from different meats or vegetables like guacamole. Just about anything you have in your camping bag works. You add all the toppings and mix them into a bag of nachos. Now, these can be any packaged nachos you get from a grocery store. The wood-fire beef and additional vegetables give the plain, crunchy, hard shells a lot more flavor, making this the perfect camping snack. An old camping trick is to always keep a lemon with you to flavor your trout, but luckily, a bit of lemon juice will also amp your walking tacos up. So do not be afraid of experimenting during your trip. Is any venture out into nature's lap truly complete without some campfire chili? Crushed tomatoes, black beans, and some chicken or beef broth can go a long way as far as comfort food in the middle of nowhere is considered. Chili was next to air in the outdoors actually in terms of importance because it did so much for you, especially by giving you your energy back. By the way, you can make these in a Dutch oven too, provided you know how to manage the heat on the campfire. In fact, everything about the dish from the sautéing of the onions to the slow cooking of the meat is done in the oven. The end product is a very comforting, relaxing, and spicy meal that wakes you up and gets you warm in those frigid nights where the temperature drops lower than you are used to. Plus, chili just tastes a lot better out in the woods for some reason. Maybe it is a placebo? Let us know if you have ever tried it while camping. Since the theme of this list seems to be food that makes the fire feel warmer, the air feel fresher, and the night so much better, it would be wrong to not mention campfire potatoes. These are not so different from your usual baked potatoes, but adding hot coals and leaving them buried in there with the coals for around 30 to 60 minutes. You had to keep some foil on hand though, because cooling them took a while, and preserving them was another matter entirely. Be a massive waste to spend an hour waiting only for your potatoes to catch dirt or something else that the wilderness is prone to. Some people had a habit of poking the potatoes with forks to add some air and make them more tender. And we will definitely be trying that at the next campfire. How about you? Popular in places like Maine, beanhole beans were no stranger to being a staple of camping cookout sessions all over. One of the most popular kinds of beans to use in Maine was Marfax beans, and in eras like the 1920s to 40s, it was really common to use molasses with them too. The pot would be buried several inches deep in the ground, resting on a hot base of coals and fire, and some people would go the extra mile by putting in stuff like brown sugar or maple syrup. People had their own fixed sets of sweeteners to add to the already natural flavor of the baked beans, kind of like an enhancement. They were also a great way to recover if you caught a cold out there, and trust us when we say that it does not take so long to catch a cold out there. We just cannot make sense of why they use beans in the name twice though. Hobo Beef has a bit of a weird name and it gives you an off-putting impression. But if you are the kind of person who enjoys getting into the rustic charm of the outdoors, then it is the perfect food for you. Maybe you have seen stews in your favorite anime with curry, potatoes, meat, and vegetables, or perhaps you just remember them fondly from your days as a kid. Hobo stew would tug at all those heartstrings by being a simple yet effectively delicious meal to rely on when you were out camping. Do not confuse this with your traditional stew though, because it is a bit different, especially in its use of spices, where you can expect to see some typical goodness to raise the heat. It just uses some green beans, hot peppers, tomato soup, and beef broth, as well as potatoes and onions, whatever kind of toppings you think will really work. As always, our cooking is done via coals and a Dutch oven, and it is left to simmer for quite a while to really absorb the flavor. Cornmeal mush was already becoming insanely popular due to the rationing efforts and the budget-friendly grocery lists of the 20th century following both the wars. But when people started to fry their mush, then we really started having fun as a nation. Cornmeal mush was not really the most beloved of dishes. People would often eat it out of necessity. However, this Midwest classic, especially appreciated amongst Amish communities, filled many stomachs in its heyday and continues to be remembered by our elders as one of the ultimate meals of their time. Some wide slices of mush, melted butter, and a hot fire burning it until it is just the right amount of crispy and golden. If you take some butter along with you while camping, though it might seem unnecessary, using it as a topping can add a delicious touch to your meal. The ore of choice for campfire utensils seems to be cast iron, and pancakes on the griddle were no different. Actually, we think that the fact that they were different from modern-day utensils added to the rich flavors they were known for, especially when there would be fresh fruit like strawberries or bananas to top your pancakes off with, giving you an even better reason to keep an eye out and explore. If you feel like by this point you are starting to feel like you have had your fair share of butter, then try out some maple syrup instead. It works just as great as a dip with buttermilk pancakes or just regular fluffy, airy goodness. This meal was particularly popular in the South besides just the Midwest, and over there they managed to make it far creamier than its Amish counterpart. So this next one is a bit of a doozy, and it involves bacon and eggs in a bag. People would cut the bacon in half and place it within the bag, but first, they would need to spray cooking spray all over the bag to ensure it acts as a proper container. Cannot have your precious bacon tasting like sour, damp paper now? You just crack the eggs on top of the bacon, fold the top of the bag, and then cook it. Some salt, black pepper, and garlic would turn the bacon into a delicacy rather than the breakfast you were used to waking up to. The next step would involve cracking some eggs on the bacon, Then, to seal the deal, you just fold the bag and use a tripod or a stick to cook it over the fire. Pretty convenient, right? It is a neat new take on the classic bacon and eggs, and it tastes better this way according to regular campers. Let's talk a little bit about the catches of the day and what we could expect, such as the reliable and aromatic grilled trout. Also, as you will find out just in a bit towards the end of the list, this goes great with some bread options too if you like having your protein with a bit of carbs. Just the simplest of things would turn your camping night into a 5-star dining in the lap of Mother Nature's luxury. Olive oil, lemon juice, and a small clove of garlic would elevate a freshly grilled trout over the fire into a meal that would keep you coming back for more and more. Some people do more than just make it over an open fire and bring their entire grills along with them, in which case you can enjoy grilled trout stuffed with herbs and flavorings too. Lightly charred and crisp, trout is a famous dish that has been consumed since the 17th century all over America. There is nothing quite as refreshing as brewing up a fresh mug of coffee over the fire to get your night going. This is not just a preference, but almost a necessity, as when temperatures drop, staying by the fire and having a hot mug of caffeine can be pretty refreshing. Campfire coffee would not have all the fanciness of your local Starbucks. It would just be black coffee in an iron mug, but sometimes the simple things are all you need to be brought back to life, especially when you have them over a conversation by the fire with your family. Some people would decide to take a French press with them because it really trapped the flavor of the coffee grounds. Others would be okay with just a pot to boil water and coffee in. What grandpas recommend with great insistence is using extra fine coffee grounds and making it with either a seize-vie or over the coals in a fire pit. Must be some serious trial and error behind that recommendation. Nothing beats the sensation of corn on the cob, especially when it is fried to a 5-star standard, wrapped in aluminum foil to preserve the taste all day long, and doused in butter and herb seasonings. Ears of corn would be readily available before or during camping, and they were one of the best snacks to take with you while you were out. They take a while to eat, fill you up, and feel great to munch on. Basically, you always felt full while having these, so there was no harm in amping up the taste factor too, right? People would make an even bigger meal out of it by pairing it up with dishes like bacon and eggs or grilled trout, as it made the perfect side to some smoky grilled protein more often than not, too. Of course, corn enjoyers could always have some private time with just an ear of corn on the cob, too, and leave satisfied. So far, you might be thinking that the list has to offer some basic beverages and savory meals, and what if you are out in the woods and that is not your cup of tea? What if you want something baked, preferably involving cake mix and sugar? The perfect thing grandparents would whip up for a camper like you was a Dutch oven cobbler. You would take all the fruits you usually use in a cobbler, dump butter and lemon soda, then the cake mix and bake it over some hot coals. What you get is one unique cobbler that kind of looks like mug cake but has that authentic nostalgic taste that people keep coming back to. People would often whip this up when they got sick of eating or catching fish and ran out of other things, or if they just felt like boosting some glucose in the brain. Camping can be a lot of mind-draining work too, you know? One backwoods recipe was bushcraft Banic Bread, which would typically be made on a griddle or skillet indoors, but in the wild even a hot stone would suffice. Just some milk powder, flour, and water for a nice thick dough, and then the stone would do the rest, making sure it was baked. You might be skeptical about the capabilities of a rock you found in a forest, but trust us when we say that you would be surprised how good they can be at cooking up food. These are unleavened breads that are rolled into the shape of a long sausage and wrapped around a stick. This gives it a pretty decent rise too. Think of it like eating a plain calzone, maybe? Or more like stuffed bread. It is a bit hard to describe the flavor profile of this dish, but some common notes you can expect are smoky, putty flavors blended in with a slightly buttery aftertaste. Banic bread can even resemble donuts. Either way, it is a doughy delight when you are so far away from DoorDash and Uber Eats. Campfire pizzas are a bit of a fancy treat out in the woods, but nonetheless, it would be criminal not to mention the recipe. Who doesn't love a good pizza, especially in the warm and cozy weather we often face while camping? Like all pizzas, you can customize this recipe to your liking or to the ingredients you were able to pack for yourself before your trip. Some might prefer a simple margarita pizza topped with a fresh herb they found in the woods. On the other hand, Some might amp the pizza up with pieces of sausages or other meats. What sets Campfire Pizzas apart from your regular takeaways or homemade pizzas is the cooking method. Instead of baking the pizza, you directly expose it to a campfire heat using whichever utensil you have available. Boy, does this make for one crunchy pizza that just about melts in your mouth. But you have to be careful of not overcooking your bread, or else the pizza would be completely inedible. Campfire Stew is easily a man's best friend after dogs, and a one-pot stop for all your hunger needs out in the woods. Families would devour this like it was God's last gift to Earth, and it makes sense because when it comes to outdoor dining, this was the most bombastic and flashy dish you could go for. Well, unless you had qualifications in outdoor cooking or baking. If you wanted something that restored your energy, was easy to gather the ingredients for, did not take a lot of effort, and filled up an entire party of people, the pot would start calling your name in a low tone, just waiting for you to pick it up and start stewing. The stews themselves would involve the hind legs of pork or bacon, chicken, or whatever other game was available. If you needed to get healthy, you would have chicken or turkey, but if you needed your strength back, some beef or pork would do the trick. One thing that people would pair up with this hearty stew or a bowl of hot chili would be skillet cornbread. Usually, you would need an iron-cast skillet and a hefty amount of buttermilk, melted butter, eggs, and vanilla extract. This would make for some of the best meals you will ever have if you felt like putting the effort into it. The reason so many of these items on the list are made on a cast iron is because it can withstand sitting on top of embers, coals, or an open fire without any kind of damage. From chili to stew to cornbread, it gives you a lot of customer choice. Except you are not a customer, and any divine meal you have there is a result of your grandpa's quick wits, your planning, and how good the two of you are at catching stuff outdoors. That kind of effort often adds a bit more sauce to a dish, and cornbread would go amazing with anything savory. That's it for our camping food list. Did we bring back any memories? If we did, like, subscribe, and let's keep those memories alive.